My name is Rex Thompson, and I'm 58 years old. I'm sitting in the living room of the house I built with my own hands 20 years ago. But today feels different. Just an hour ago, my son's wife Jessica screamed at me, "This isn't your house anymore, old man. You need to leave." She was laughing with my son Daniel like it was some kind of joke. What they don't know is that exactly 1 week ago, I signed papers that are about to change everything. They think they're in control, but they have no idea what's coming. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button. You won't believe what happened when they found out the truth about whose house this really was. Make sure to subscribe because this story will show you that sometimes the quiet ones have the biggest surprises. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand how we got here. My name is Rex Thompson, and I've been a carpenter for most of my adult life. I learned the trade from my father, and there's something deeply satisfying about building something with your own hands that will last for generations. 5 years ago, I lost my wife Martha to cancer. She was the love of my life, and losing her felt like losing half of myself. This house we're talking about is a 4-bedroom colonial-style home in Springfield, Massachusetts. Martha and I broke ground on this place back in 2004. Every board, every nail, every piece of trim was placed with love and care. I remember Martha standing in what would become our kitchen, arms spread wide, describing her vision for custom oak cabinets and granite countertops. We saved for 3 years just to afford the materials, and I spent every weekend and evening after work making her dream come true. The living room where I'm sitting right now has a stone fireplace that took me 2 months to complete. I hand-selected each stone, and Martha would sit on the porch swing we built together, watching me work and bringing me sweet tea when the summer heat got too intense. Our bedroom upstairs has built-in bookshelves where Martha kept her romance novels, and I kept my woodworking magazines. The master bathroom has a clawfoot tub that Martha fell in love with at an antique store, and I spent 3 days figuring out the plumbing to make it work. My son Daniel is 32 now. Growing up, he was always by my side when I was working on projects around the house. I taught him how to use a saw, how to measure twice and cut once, how to respect the tools and the craft. He was a good kid, always eager to help, always asking questions about why we did things a certain way. After high school, he went to college and got into the insurance business. It's steady work, and I was proud of him for making something of himself. 2 years ago, Daniel married Jessica. She's 28, works in marketing, and when I first met her, she seemed nice enough. A little strong-willed maybe, but Martha always said that strong women make the best wives if you treat them right. Jessica has blonde hair, blue eyes, and a smile that can light up a room when she wants to use it. But I started noticing things after they got married. The way she would interrupt Daniel when he was talking, the way she would make decisions for both of them without asking his opinion. After Martha passed, this house felt enormous and empty. The silence was deafening. I'd walk through rooms where her laughter used to echo and the loneliness was crushing. Daniel would visit every Sunday for dinner just like Martha had always insisted on. Those Sunday dinners became the highlight of my week. We'd sit at the dining room table Martha had refinished herself, and Daniel would tell me about work, about his marriage, about his plans for the future. Last year, Daniel and Jessica ran into some financial trouble. Daniel's company had layoffs, and while he kept his job, they cut his commission structure significantly. Jessica's marketing agency lost a major client, and her income dropped by almost half. They were struggling to make rent on their apartment in Boston, and the stress was showing on both of them. When Daniel asked if they could stay with me for a few months to get back on their feet, I didn't hesitate. This house has 4 bedrooms, and family helps family. That's how I was raised, and that's what Martha would have wanted. The first month they moved in was actually pleasant. Jessica seemed grateful for the help, and Daniel was more like his old self. We'd have coffee together in the mornings before they headed off to work. Jessica would cook dinner sometimes, and we'd all eat together like a real family. She even asked to see photo albums of Daniel as a kid, and we'd spend evenings looking through pictures of camping trips and Little League games. But then things started to change slowly at first. Jessica began rearranging things around the house. It started small. She replaced the curtains in the living room with something more modern, saying the old ones were too dated. When I mentioned that Martha had picked those curtains out specifically because they matched the stone in the fireplace, Jessica just shrugged and said, "Well, we live here too, Rex. We need to feel at home." Next, she moved furniture around. The couch that had been positioned to face the fireplace for 20 years suddenly faced the television instead. Martha's antique end tables were pushed into corners and replaced with sleek metal ones Jessica had ordered online. When I asked about it, she said the old furniture was too heavy and made the room feel cramped. Daniel didn't say anything during these conversations. He'd just look uncomfortable and change the subject. When I tried to talk to him privately about it, he'd say things like, "Dad, they're just decorating. It doesn't hurt anything." But it did hurt. Every change felt like another piece of Martha being erased from her own home. The situation escalated when Jessica started inviting friends over without asking. I'd come home from running errands to find 4 or 5 people I'd never met sitting in my living room drinking wine and laughing loudly. The kitchen would be destroyed with dishes piled in the sink and food spilled on the counters Martha had been so proud of. When I'd start cleaning up, Jessica would say, "Oh, Rex, you don't have to do that. We'll get to it later." But later never came. One evening I was watching television in the living room when Jessica came in and informed me that she and Daniel needed the space for a date night. She actually said, "Would you mind watching TV in your bedroom tonight? This is kind of our space for the evening." I was stunned. This was my living room in my house, and I was being asked to leave so they could have privacy. The breaking point came when I walked into the living room one morning to find that Jessica had removed all of Martha's family photos from the mantelpiece. When I asked where they were, she said she'd put them in a box in the garage because they were too depressing and made the house feel like a museum. She'd replaced them with photos of her and Daniel and some abstract art pieces she'd bought. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to the kitchen for a glass of water and heard Jessica talking on the phone in the living room. She was speaking quietly, but I could make out most of what she was saying. "Don't worry about the old man," she was telling someone. "He's getting up there in age, and Daniel says he's been talking about retirement homes. Soon this whole place will be ours anyway." After that phone conversation, Jessica's behavior became even more brazen. She started treating the house like it was already hers, establishing what she called house rules that I was expected to follow. There were specific hours when I could use the kitchen, restrictions on when I could watch television in the living room, and she even tried to establish a schedule for when I could take showers. "Rex," she said one morning over breakfast, "Daniel and I have been talking, and we think it would be better if we had some structure around here. We're all adults, and adults have routines." She handed me a piece of paper with a schedule typed out. Kitchen use, 6 to 7 a.m., 12 to 1 p.m., 6 7 p.m., living room TV, 8:10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It was like being given rules for living in my own home. When I protested, Daniel supported her completely. "Dad, it's not unreasonable. We're all sharing the space, so we need to coordinate." But coordination isn't the same as being regulated like a child in your own house. The most shocking moment came when I returned from grocery shopping to find that Jessica had changed the locks on the master bedroom. She met me at the door with a bright smile and announced, "Daniel and I decided to move into the master bedroom. You don't really need all that space, and we're planning to start a family soon." I stood there holding bags of groceries, staring at the new deadbolt on the door of the bedroom I'd shared with Martha for 16 years. "Jessica, that's my bedroom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Was your bedroom?" she corrected. "But Rex, be practical. It's the biggest room in the house, and we're the ones who'll be here long term. You can use the guest room down the hall. It's perfectly comfortable." When I looked to Daniel for support, he avoided eye contact. "Dad, she's right. The guest room is nice and we do need more space." My own son was standing there agreeing that I should be displaced from the bedroom I'd shared with his mother. That weekend I had to move my clothes, my furniture, and what was left of Martha's belongings into a room half the size. As I was packing Martha's jewelry box, Jessica appeared in the doorway. "You know, Rex, you might want to think about downsizing some of this stuff. The guest room is much smaller and clutter isn't good for anyone." But Jessica wasn't finished. A few days later, I came home to find a real estate agent walking through my house with Jessica. She was showing the woman around, pointing out features, discussing square footage. When she saw me, she didn't even look embarrassed. "Oh, Rex, this is Linda. She's helping us understand the property value in this area." Jessica's smile was sweet, but her eyes were cold. "You know, for planning purposes." I asked Linda to leave immediately, and after she was gone, I confronted Jessica. "What exactly are you planning, Rex? Let's be honest about the situation here. You're getting older. This house is too big for you to maintain, and Daniel and I are the logical people to take it over. We're just being proactive." The worst part was watching Daniel through all of this. My son, who used to defend me against neighborhood bullies, who used to ask my advice about everything from girls to career choices, just stood silently while his wife dismantled my life piece by piece. One evening, Jessica announced that she'd arranged for contractors to come and open up the master bedroom by removing a wall to make it even larger. When I told her absolutely not, she laughed. "Rex, you're not thinking clearly. This house needs updating, and we're the ones with the energy and vision to do it." "This is my house," I said firmly. "Is it though?" she replied. "I mean, really, you're here by yourself. You can't maintain it properly. And Daniel and I are the ones actually living a life here. Maybe it's time to face reality about what's best for everyone." The final confrontation came on a Tuesday afternoon in early October. I'd gone to my weekly doctor's appointment and decided to stop by the hardware store afterward to pick up some materials for fixing a loose board on the back porch. When I pulled into my driveway at around 3 o'clock, I noticed a car I didn't recognize parked on the street. I walked through the front door to find Jessica giving a tour to a young couple probably in their early 30s. She was showing them around my living room, explaining the features of the house like she was the owner. "The fireplace is original stonework," she was saying, "and as you can see, there's plenty of space for entertaining. The previous owner had very traditional taste, but there's enormous potential here for someone with vision." I stood in my own entryway listening to Jessica refer to me as the previous owner while I was standing right there. The couple noticed me first, and the woman smiled politely. "Oh, hello. Are you the owner?" Before I could answer, Jessica jumped in smoothly. "This is Rex. He's the current resident, but the property will be available soon. He's planning to move to a senior living facility." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at Jessica, and she stared right back with a confident smile. "Isn't that right, Rex? You've been talking about how this place is getting too much for you to handle?" "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. "I've never said anything of the sort. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere." The couple looked confused, sensing tension they didn't understand. Jessica's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "Rex gets confused sometimes. It's part of the aging process. We're helping him with the transition." That was the moment something inside me snapped. For months, I'd been patient. I'd been understanding. I'd tried to keep the peace for Daniel's sake. But standing there watching this woman lie to strangers about my mental capacity in my own living room, I'd had enough. "I think you folks should leave," I said to the couple. "There seems to be some confusion about this property." After they left, looking bewildered and hurried, Jessica turned on me with fury I'd never seen before. "Rex, what is wrong with you? You just embarrassed yourself and ruined a perfectly good opportunity." "Opportunity for what?" I demanded. "For all of us to move forward. You can't seriously think you're going to live in this big house forever. You're almost 60 years old, Rex. Be realistic." "I am being realistic. This is my house." Jessica laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Your house, Rex, look around. Daniel and I live here. We pay expenses, we maintain the property, we're building a life here. You're just existing." That's when she said the words that would change everything between us. "This isn't your house anymore, old man. You need to leave." She was still laughing when Daniel walked through the front door. Instead of being horrified by what his wife had just said to his father, Daniel looked annoyed with me. "Dad, what's going on?" "Jessica texted me that you were being difficult with some people who came to look at the house." "Look at the house for what?" I asked. Daniel and Jessica exchanged a glance, and then Daniel sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Dad, we need to talk about your future. This house is too much for you, and Jessica and I are ready to take on the responsibility." "Take on the responsibility of what? It's my house." Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically. "He actually thinks he still owns this place, Daniel. It's getting worse." Daniel looked at me with what I can only describe as pity. "Dad, face reality. You're getting old, and we're the future of this family. Jessica and I have plans. We have energy. We have our whole lives ahead of us. You need to start thinking about what's practical." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and realized I was seeing a stranger. This wasn't the boy I'd taught to swing a hammer who'd helped me build birdhouses for his mother's garden. This was someone who'd been poisoned against his own father by a woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to getting what she wanted. Jessica stepped closer, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a reasonable tone. Rex, if you don't start cooperating with us, if you don't start respecting our position here, we're going to have to make some difficult decisions. No one wants that, but we can't have you undermining our plans for this family. That night I sat in the guest room that had become my bedroom, surrounded by boxes of belongings that used to have a proper place in this house. I looked through photo albums of Martha and me building this place, of Daniel growing up in these rooms of family gatherings around the dining room table. I realized that the home I'd built with love had been turned into a battlefield, and I was losing the war. But as I sat there in the dark, I started thinking about options they probably hadn't considered. The next morning, I called my old friend Jim Patterson. Jim's been practicing law for 30 years, and he helped Martha and me with the paperwork when we bought this land and built the house. I trust him, and more importantly, I knew he'd give me straight answers about what my options were. Rex Dita, Jim said when I explained the situation. I'm sorry to hear you're going through this, but legally speaking, you're in a much stronger position than they seem to think. This house is titled solely in your name. Your son and his wife are essentially guests, and regardless of how long they've been living there, they have no legal claim to the property. We met for lunch that afternoon at a diner downtown, away from the house where Jessica might overhear. Jim explained that while Daniel and Jessica had been contributing to household expenses that didn't give them any ownership rights, they weren't on the deed, they weren't on the mortgage, and they had no legal standing to make decisions about the property. What are my options? I asked. Well, you could evict them, but that would be messy and probably destroy your relationship with Daniel permanently. Or, Jim paused, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. You could sell the house, clean slate for everyone. The idea hit me like a lightning bolt. Sell the house. Why hadn't I thought of that before? I'd been so focused on defending my territory that I hadn't considered just removing myself from the battlefield entirely. How quickly could something like that happen? I asked. With the right buyer and a clean title, 30 to 60 days from listing to closing. I spent the rest of that week thinking about it. Every time Jessica made another demand, every time Daniel sided with her over me, every time I felt like a stranger in my own home, the idea became more appealing. Why was I fighting so hard to stay somewhere I was clearly not wanted? That Friday, I called Sarah Mitchell, a real estate agent Jim had recommended. Sarah had an excellent reputation and, more importantly, had never worked with Jessica. I arranged to meet her the following Monday morning while Daniel and Jessica were at work. Sarah walked through the house with me, taking notes and photos. She was impressed with the quality of the construction and the maintenance. Mr. Thompson, this is a beautiful home. The craftsmanship is exceptional, and it's in excellent condition. In this market, I think we could have it sold within a month. What about the current occupants? I asked. Are they on the deed or the lease? Neither. They're family members who are staying here temporarily. Sarah nodded professionally. Then they would need to be out before closing, but that's a standard part of the process. Most buyers won't want to inherit tenant situations. Over the weekend, while Jessica was busy rearranging more furniture and Daniel was watching football, I made my decision. I was going to sell the house, and I wasn't going to tell them until everything was finalized. Monday morning, I signed the listing agreement. Sarah took professional photos on Tuesday. By Wednesday, the house was on the market. The asking price was fair, but firm. $320,000, which was exactly what the house was worth according to 3 independent appraisals. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Jessica was showing strangers around my house pretending she had the right to sell it, I was actually selling it without her knowledge. During this time, Jessica's behavior became even more outrageous. She started referring to different rooms as hers, telling me which areas of the house I wasn't welcome in during certain hours. She rearranged the kitchen completely, putting Martha's dishes in storage and replacing them with modern stuff she'd ordered online. Rex, she announced one morning, Daniel and I have decided that you should ask before going into the backyard. We're planning to do some landscaping, and we don't want you messing up our plans. The backyard I'd designed and built, the garden where Martha had grown tomatoes and roses, the deck I'd constructed with my own hands. I needed permission to enter it. The house showed beautifully. Sarah brought potential buyers through on Thursday and Friday afternoons while Jessica and Daniel were at work. By the end of the first week, we had 3 serious offers. I accepted an offer from a young family with 2 children who fell in love with the craftsmanship in the neighborhood. They could close in 3 weeks. I spent those 3 weeks quietly moving my most precious belongings to a storage unit across town. Photo albums, Martha's jewelry, my tools, anything that couldn't be replaced. I also found a perfect one-bedroom apartment in a senior living community about 10 minutes from downtown. It was modern, maintenance-free, and came with a community workshop where I could continue woodworking. The day I signed the final paperwork was bittersweet. I was selling the house Martha and I had built together, but I was also freeing myself from a situation that had become toxic and unbearable. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday evening, I was sitting in the living room when Daniel and Jessica came home from work. They were in good moods talking about plans for the weekend, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. Jessica was describing some furniture she wanted to buy for their bedroom, and Daniel was nodding along enthusiastically. I let them settle in, let them grab snacks from the kitchen, let them get comfortable on the couch that Jessica had positioned to face away from the fireplace. Then I cleared my throat. Daniel, Jessica, I need to talk to both of you about something important. Jessica didn't even look up from her phone. If this is about us changing things around here, Rex, save your breath. We've been over this. We live here too, and we're not going to walk on eggshells in our own home. Our home, I repeated quietly. Yes, our home, Jessica said firmly, finally looking at me. Daniel and I have been building a life here while you've been stuck in the past. It's time to accept that things have changed. Daniel was looking uncomfortable, probably expecting another argument about furniture or photographs or house rules. He had no idea what was coming. You're right that things have changed, I said calmly. In fact, they've changed more than you know. I reached into the folder I'd placed beside my chair and pulled out the closing documents. I sold the house. The silence in the room was absolute. Jessica's phone slipped from her hand onto the couch cushion. Daniel's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. What? Jessica finally whispered. I sold the house, I repeated, setting the paperwork on the coffee table between us. We closed this afternoon. The new owners take possession in 30 days. Jessica exploded off the couch. You can't sell this house. We live here. Our stuff is here. You can't just... This is illegal. Actually, it's completely legal, I said calmly. The house is titled in my name only. You have no legal claim to this property. Daniel found his voice. Dad, you can't do this to us. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have money saved for a move right now. You should have thought about that before you decided I was too old and confused to live in my own home, I replied. Jessica was pacing now, her face red with anger and panic. This is insane. You're an old man having some kind of breakdown. Daniel, call someone. Call your uncle. Call a lawyer. Call someone who can stop this. There's no one to call, I said. The sale is final. You have 30 days to find alternative housing. Jessica spun around to face me, her eyes wild. We have rights. Squatters' rights, tenants' rights, something. You can't just throw us out. I picked up another document from my folder. Actually, I checked on that too. Since you've never paid rent, never signed a lease, and have no ownership stake in the property, you're considered guests who have now been asked to leave. The reality of the situation began to sink in. Daniel slumped forward, his head in his hands. Dad, why didn't you talk to us? Why didn't you warn us? Like you warned me when you changed the locks on my bedroom. Like you warned me when you brought strangers through here to look at my property. Like you warned me when your wife told people I was moving to a nursing home. Jessica was still trying to find an angle, some way to fight back. What about all the money we've put into this place, the improvements, the expenses we've covered? Gifts, I said simply. Voluntary contributions to household expenses, nothing that creates ownership or legal obligation on my part. She looked around the room desperately, as if the walls themselves might offer some solution. Where are we supposed to come up with first and last month's rent, plus security deposit in 30 days? I honestly don't know, I replied, but I suspect you'll figure something out. You're young, you have energy, you're the future of the family, remember? Daniel looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Dad, I know we haven't been perfect, but this is extreme. We're family. Family, I repeated. Yes, let's talk about family. Family doesn't kick their father out of his own bedroom. Family doesn't refer to their father as the previous owner to strangers. Family doesn't threaten to make difficult decisions if someone doesn't cooperate with being displaced from their own home. Jessica had stopped pacing and was staring at the closing documents like they might spontaneously combust. How long have you been planning this? 3 weeks, I said honestly. Ever since you told that couple I was moving to a senior facility and you'd be taking over. But where will you go? Daniel asked, and for the first time in months, I heard genuine concern in his voice. I've already found a place, a nice apartment in a community where people treat each other with respect. Jessica was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. This is spite. This is a mean, spiteful thing to do to your own son. No, I said quietly. Spite would have been evicting you with no notice. Spite would have been changing the locks while you were at work. Spite would have been treating you the way you've been treating me. The next 30 days were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The first week was filled with anger bargaining and desperate attempts to find some way to reverse what I'd done. Jessica called lawyers, though none would take her case once they understood the legal situation. Daniel tried appealing to relatives, but when they heard the whole story, including how I'd been treated, the support he expected didn't materialize. My brother Tom, who lives in Florida, called me after Daniel reached out to him. Rex, Daniel told me you sold the house out from under them. I was ready to give you hell until he started explaining why, and let me tell you, the boy didn't realize how bad he was making himself sound. Jessica tried everything from tears to threats to promises that things would be different if I'd just call the buyers and cancel the sale. But I'd moved past the point where her promises meant anything. Trust once broken the way she'd broken it doesn't get repaired with words. The second week reality began to set in, and they started actively looking for apartments. The housing market was tight, and places that fit their budget were few and far between. They found themselves competing with multiple applicants for every decent rental, and many required more money up front than they had available. During this time, I was quietly moving the last of my belongings to my new apartment. It was strange boxing up a lifetime of memories, but also liberating. Each item I packed was something I'd chosen to keep, something that would have a proper place in my new life, instead of being hidden away to avoid offending someone else's aesthetic sensibilities. Jessica's behavior during this period swung between extremes. Sometimes she'd be apologetic, promising that she understood now what she'd done wrong and begging for another chance. Other times, she'd be furious, accusing me of ruining their lives and destroying their future plans. "Rex, please," she said one morning over coffee. "I know I made mistakes. I know I overstepped, but we can fix this. We can all live here together peacefully." "Jessica," I replied, "you didn't overstep. You tried to take over completely. There's a difference." Daniel was quieter, but no less desperate. "Dad, I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she respects boundaries. We can work this out." But the damage was too deep. It wasn't just about Jessica's behavior. It was about Daniel's complete failure to stand up for his father when it mattered. A relationship that fundamental once broken doesn't simply get repaired. In the third week, they found an apartment. It was smaller than what they wanted, more expensive than they'd hoped, and in a neighborhood that wasn't their first choice. But it was available and time was running out. I helped them financially with the security deposit. Not because I owed them anything, but because completely destroying them wasn't my goal. I just wanted them out of my life in a way that would make it clear that actions have consequences. The day they moved out was emotionally complicated. Watching Daniel load boxes into a rental truck, seeing him struggle with the weight of furniture he'd have to carry up 3 flights of stairs to their new place, I felt sadness for what our relationship had become. But I didn't feel guilt. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Jessica's final words to me were, "I hope you're happy now living all alone in your precious house." "I'm not living here anymore either," I told her. "I'm moving to my new apartment next week." The look of shock on her face was almost comical. In all her scheming and planning, she'd never considered that I might not want to stay in a place that held so many painful recent memories. After they left, I walked through the empty rooms one last time. In the kitchen, I remembered Martha teaching Daniel how to make her famous chocolate chip cookies. In the living room, I remembered Christmas mornings and birthday parties and quiet evenings reading together. In the master bedroom, I remembered holding Martha's hand during her final weeks, promising her I'd be okay. But I also remembered Jessica's laugh when she told strangers I was moving to a nursing home. I remembered Daniel's face when he told me to face reality about getting old. I remembered being asked to leave my own living room so they could have privacy. Some houses become haunted by bad memories, and this one had become haunted for me. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new apartment drinking morning coffee and looking out at a beautiful garden that someone else maintains. My life has changed dramatically, and mostly for the better. The apartment complex I chose caters to active seniors, and it's been a revelation. There's a woodworking shop in the basement where I've been building birdhouses and small furniture pieces. There's a library, a fitness center, organized trips to museums and theaters. I've made friends here, something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Most surprisingly, I've met someone. Her name is Carol. She's 55 and she lost her husband to a heart attack 2 years ago. We started talking in the library one afternoon when she noticed me reading a book about furniture restoration. She's kind, intelligent, and treats me with the respect and consideration that had been missing from my life for so long. Carol has her own apartment here, her own life, her own independence. We spend time together because we enjoy each other's company, not because either of us needs taken care of. It's a completely different dynamic from what I had with Martha, but it's good in its own way. Daniel calls sometimes. The conversations are awkward and stiff, but they happen. He and Jessica are still married, though. From what I can gather, the financial stress of their forced move has put strain on their relationship. They're both working more hours to afford their new place, and Jessica has had to give up some of the lifestyle habits she'd developed while living rent-free in my house. About 3 months ago, Daniel called to apologize, really apologize, not just try to manipulate me into helping them financially. "Dad, I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realize how badly I handled the situation. I should have stood up for you. I should have recognized that Jessica was out of line. I should have been a better son." I appreciate you saying that. I told him because I did appreciate it, even though it didn't change what had happened. "Is there any chance we could try to rebuild our relationship?" he asked. "I'm willing to try," I said, "but it's going to be different than it was before. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago, and you're not the same son." We've had lunch together twice since then. Both times were pleasant but careful, like two people getting to know each other for the first time. Maybe that's what we need to do, start over and see if we can build something new, instead of trying to repair something that was broken so completely. Jessica and I have had no contact since moving day, and I'm fine with that. I bear her no ill will, but I also have no desire to pretend that what happened between us was just a misunderstanding that can be smoothed over with time. Last month I drove by the old house. The new family has painted the front door a cheerful blue, and there are children's toys in the front yard. A swing set has been installed in the backyard where Martha's rose garden used to be. It looks like a home where laughter lives, and I'm genuinely happy for them. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that selling the house wasn't really about punishing Daniel and Jessica, though that was certainly part of it. It was about reclaiming my own sense of self-worth and dignity. For too long, I'd allowed myself to be diminished, to be treated as an obstacle to someone else's plans for my life. The hardest lesson I learned is that sometimes love means enforcing boundaries even when it hurts everyone involved, especially when it hurts everyone involved. If I had continued to allow Jessica to treat me with disrespect, if I had continued to enable Daniel's passivity in the face of my mistreatment, I wouldn't have been helping anyone. I would have just been teaching them that their behavior was acceptable. There's a woodworking saying that my father taught me years ago: measure twice, cut once. It means you should think carefully before taking action that can't be undone. But there's another saying that's equally important. Some things can't be fixed with glue and clamps. Some breaks are so fundamental that the only option is to start over with new materials. I think about Martha often, especially in the evenings when I'm working in the wood shop. I wonder what she would think about how everything unfolded. I believe she would understand that protecting my dignity wasn't about being stubborn or spiteful. It was about honoring the values we built our life on: respect, kindness, and the understanding that everyone deserves to be treated with basic human decency in their own home. The house Martha and I built together is gone from my life, but the lessons we learned building it remain. Good foundations are essential, quality materials matter, and if you take proper care of something, it will serve you well for many years. But when something becomes too damaged to repair, sometimes the wisest choice is to start fresh somewhere new. Sometimes the greatest act of love is teaching someone that actions have consequences, and sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself again. I'm 60 years old now, and I'm finally learning that it's never too late to rebuild your life on your own terms. What do you think about this story? Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own dignity and self-respect? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being, even when family relationships are involved. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you're never too old to start a new chapter in your life. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and don't let anyone convince you that you don't deserve respect in your own home.